It's no secret that social media advertising can be a great way to get in front of a new, wider audience and introduce them to your brand and potentially generate new customers. But with all the different platforms that are out there, it can be hard to know where to start if you're trying to choose one or just a couple different platforms. So what I want to do today is go through a little bit of the demographic information behind most of the major platforms and talk about some high-level targeting tactics you can use on each one to help you decide where to prioritize your ad spend. We're going to start with Facebook because it is the largest social media platform around the world with 2.8 billion active users. Nearly 73% of those users are between the ages of 18 and 44, but this is a platform that's kind of going a little bit further away from younger folks. One of the things that they do have here is that 86% of users on Facebook have $100,000 plus in annual income. They might have a little bit more money than some of the other platforms, but again, they're kind of moving away from the younger folks. If you see the chart down below the stats that I have here, in 2015, 58% of users between the ages of 12 and 34 spent most of their time on Facebook. As of 2020, that is the same percent almost, but it's combined between Facebook and Instagram. Now it's only 32% of 12 to 34-year-olds use Facebook the most out of all of their social media platforms. You can see a number of others that are coming into the mix there, and we'll talk about a number of those here coming up. Facebook does have relatively active users. 73% of users log into the platform and engage daily, and 98% of users log in monthly. So that is almost all of the billions of users that they have logging in at least on a monthly basis. Typically, users spend an average of 38 minutes per day on Facebook. So just think about how you engage on Facebook, how much time you spend in the news feed, going to different people's profiles. From an advertiser's perspective, that's a lot of inventory that we can help fill and make sure that we're reaching our users in the right way. Now, again, in the same way that Facebook is starting to have a little bit of a decline in younger audiences, they're also seeing a bit of a decline in the amount of time spent on the platform. You can see in the chart off to the right, the blue bars show the amount of minutes that people usually use. The stat I have at 38 minutes is for 2019, and the projected numbers based on the last time these were pulled was that it was going to go down to 37 for 2020 and 2021, and you'll see that Instagram and Snapchat have only been gaining over the last few years as people spend more time on those platforms. The other thing to know about Facebook is that mobile devices are by far the most popular way to access the platform. The chart I have down in the bottom left shows you that 98.3% of people use some kind of mobile device to access Facebook, and there are 81% of people who exclusively use a mobile device. There are only about 17.3% of people that use both a phone and a computer, and less than 2% of users use only a laptop or a desktop computer to access the platform. So when you're putting together your ad creative, your landing pages, trying to think of the call to action that you're using, remember that the vast majority of users are going to be coming from a mobile device. We want to make sure that we have a good mobile experience for them to have. Before I get into any targeting options, I want to talk about Instagram because these two live within the same environment because Facebook owns Instagram. Instagram also is a very popular platform. It has 500 million daily active users. Almost 2/3 of them, 57%, are women, only 43% are men, and almost 63% of all users are between the ages of 18 and 34. So going back to that younger age range that we talked about on Facebook, Instagram is starting to take over a little bit of that inventory, which is why it was a good idea for Facebook to buy Instagram. The good news for advertisers is that 9 in 10 users on Instagram follow a business. They are willing to engage with your business page as long as you provide value, make sure that you're fitting into the Instagram environment and being able to engage with users on a regular basis. People say that they spend an average of 29 minutes per day on Instagram. And off to the right, you can see there have been a number of different forecasts for the number of worldwide Instagram users. There's one in November of 2019, one in June of 2020, and one in October of 2020. And each time the forecast for how 2021, 2022, and 2023 were going to perform have gone up. People are going to Instagram and spending more time on there at a quicker rate than what some of those initial forecasts were. It's only growing in popularity, so it can be a great way to reach your target audience. As I mentioned before, Facebook and Instagram live in the same environment. You can target Instagram users through Facebook Business Manager, through Ads Manager. And there are a number of different targeting options. You can go by any of the demographic information. You can narrow down by country and language. You can focus on devices if you want to lean into not only mobile, but you can also focus on Android versus Apple, certain different versions of the iOS or the operating system that they have. And then you can also leverage anything around interests, behaviors. There's some work information in there, as well as Facebook's bread and butter, which are their lookalike audiences. And you can also retarget users based on how they've engaged with your website, with your app, with your Facebook shop, with your Instagram posts, all sorts of different things. As you can see off to the right, we have a video that goes over all of the Facebook targeting options in a guide for 2021. So if you're interested in having a longer, in-depth view of all of those targeting options, check out the video at the top of the screen now. Next, I want to talk about YouTube. It has 2.3 billion monthly active users, and you might not realize it, but YouTube is actually the second largest search engine used around the world. Nearly 73% of adults use YouTube, and a lot of the watch time, just in the same way that we talked about Facebook, comes from mobile. You can see that there is a bit of a decline in the age ranges of who uses YouTube in the chart that I have off to the left. The age ranges from 15 to 25 and 26 to 35 are at that 77%. But if we start to get into the older generations, anybody who's 56 plus years old, only about 2/3 or 67% of those users end up using YouTube. Typically, people spend almost 42 minutes a day on YouTube. And if you think about how people are spending their time, nearly 82% of them are using it to get entertainment. Only 23% of it are using to get news, and only 18% are following brands and companies. So one thing to keep in mind here is that people are trying to go to YouTube to be entertained at a very, very high rate, whether they're trying to watch a show, whether they're trying to listen to music. All of these different options could be coming through. So make sure when you're putting your creative together, you're blending into the experience that you're trying to have based on how you're trying to target users. And YouTube does have a number of different targeting options. Like most of the platforms, you can target by age, gender, country, and the different devices that users are using. But just like on the Google Display Network, you can also use affinity and in-market audiences based on user behavior around the Google Display Network and the insights that Google has based on where users have been around the web. You can create custom audiences, which you can target people either based on their purchase intent or some of the interests that they have, as well as doing a little bit of almost search retargeting based on the keywords people have typed into Google, and then targeting them on YouTube based on that behavior. You can also target based on topics and different placements around YouTube, as well as using similar audiences and almost the full range of retargeting audiences available on the Google Display Network. Just like with Facebook, we have a YouTube ads targeting options guide for 2021. So if you want to check out that video, it's at the top of the screen now. Now let's talk about Snapchat. This is one of the newer social media platforms that we have a self-serve advertising platform for. There are 33.1 million global users, and this platform does tend to lean very young. 75% of users are between the ages of 13 and 34. Only a quarter of the people on the platform are 35 years or older. 60% are women, 40% of them are men, and people spend about 26 minutes a day on average engaging on Snapchat. Snapchat also is the second most accessed social media platform on any given day. Facebook has about 51% of people who will go back to the platform several times a day, as you can see in that chart down in the bottom left. Snapchat is the second with about 46% of people who will go back several times a day. So not only is this audience on the younger end, but they are also highly engaged, and they regularly come back to engage on Snapchat, even if they spend a little less time on the platform than they would on YouTube, let's say. One thing also to keep in mind is that younger audiences tend to have better ad recall in a short amount of time than older generations. You can see this chart off to the right. Granted, it's made by Snapchat, so it certainly serves their purposes, but ad recall in this study among those who watched 0 to 2 seconds was at about 55% of folks in Generation Z, which is the ages of 13 to 24. Only about 46% had ad recall in the millennials group, and only 26% in the Gen X and Boomers, which are the 40-plus-year-old groups. All this to say that when you're putting your creative together for Snapchat, it's probably best, just like you would on any other platform, to make sure that you've got a good hook and you make sure that the beginning of your ad is going to be really impactful, because sometimes users might not watch quite as much of it. But the good news is that since this is a younger platform, most of those users will retain and have some form of recall of your ad, even if they don't watch the entire thing. Snapchat also lets you target by age and gender, country, and devices, but it has some target audiences that the rest of the platforms that we're talking about today simply don't have. There are third-party advanced demographics based on Datalogix, Nielsen, all these different third-party providers that allow you to engage with users based on their household income, parental status, brand preference, but you can also target based on lifestyle and shopping behaviors. You can target based on location visitors. Think of some major retailers or sporting event arenas. You can retarget based on how people have engaged with those places and whether they've checked in. You can also retarget based on how people have engaged with your creative as well as your website on Snapchat. And just like the other platforms we've talked about, if you're interested in learning more and getting an in-depth run through of all those different targeting options, check out the video at the top of the screen. For the next platform, we're going to lean into an even younger audience, and that's TikTok. There are a number of different stats out there, but for the US, there are about 45.4 million users in the country. 62% of them are ages 10 to 29, which means that about 60% of the users are within that Generation Z that we talked about for Snapchat. Nearly 60% are women, 40% are men, but that has shifted over the last few years. When TikTok first started, it was much more heavily a male platform. It seems to be shifting depending on which set of stats you look at. Users spend about 52 minutes per day, and you can see in the chart down at the bottom left that this is quickly becoming one of the more popular platforms for US teens. In the fall of 2020, you can see it overtook Instagram, as 29% of the teens surveyed said that TikTok was their favorite platform, and only 25% said that Instagram was. Snapchat still won with 34%, but you can certainly see how we've kind of talked about a lot of the different platforms here. Facebook is only at 2% for this much younger audience. So if we're trying to reach some of the generations that are going to either be influencing a parent's decision or coming into their own buying power in the coming years, Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat could be a great way to start to cement your brand within a certain industry to make sure that when those users are ready to make a purchase or they're influencing that purchase, you're the brand that they go with. Unfortunately, this is the only platform that we do not have a targeting options video for yet. It's under construction, hence the cone off to the side. But TikTok also has a relatively limited set of targeting that you can use. There's age and gender, country, and devices like the other platforms. There's also some retargeting options based on how people engage with your site, as well as engage with different content on the app. But there are only a few different placements we have here. There are some expressed interests that would feel similar to an in-market audience on Google, or some of the interest targeting on Snapchat, where you can select from a preset drop-down list and check a box for a specific interest. There are also category placements to make sure that even though you're targeting people who have the right interest, you're also making sure that they're in the right mindset because they're looking at the same type of content while they're on the TikTok platform. The next platform I want to talk about is Pinterest. It has 400 million monthly active users according to their site, and about 77% of them are women. So it is a very female-heavy platform. 85% of Pinterest users say that's where they want to go when they start a project, and almost 98% of those searches don't include any sort of brand associated with the project that they're working on. So this is a great way to get in front of users who are trying to find solutions and haven't already selected the outlet with which they want to make those decisions. 85% of pinners are on the mobile app. So again, just like some of the other platforms we talked about, this is a very mobile heavy platform. So we want to make sure that we're reaching users with an engaging experience on a mobile device, and we haven't designed everything around a desktop experience. And over 50% of people on Pinterest live outside the United States. So there's quite a large range of people, over 200 million across the world. There are lots of options for you to target on Pinterest. We do have a video that you can check out at the top of the screen right now that goes through all the different Pinterest ads targeting options, but just like some of the other platforms, it's got age and gender, country, devices. Then there are also interest categories, which again will come from a drop-down list, but you can also target keywords if you want to get really specific on different types of projects, trying to reach users looking for specific solutions. There's lots of different ways you can customize that keyword targeting. And you can also reach users based on website retargeting and how they've engaged with your pins on the Pinterest platform as well. Twitter is another worldwide platform that has 192 million daily active users. Nearly 63% of them are 35 to 65 years old. So this is one of the platforms where if you're trying to reach users that are a little bit older, this might be a better fit for you than looking at TikTok or Snapchat or any of those platforms that we've talked about that are a little bit younger. Unlike a lot of the other platforms that we've talked about, 66% of users on Twitter are men. It is a much more male-heavy platform. Only 34% are women, and 42% of US users have a college degree, which is a bit more than any other platform that's out there. There are a number of different stats that you can see off to the right that compares all adults in the US versus adult Twitter users. You can also see that 41% of users on Twitter have income over $75,000, whereas the average within the US is only about 32%. So these folks tend to be college educated, have a little bit of a higher income. They also tend to be more male-centric as well. Users report spending about 3.5 minutes per session when they go on Twitter. You can also see in the chart down at the bottom left that although Twitter has plateaued a little bit in terms of the number of monetized active users, it is still growing over the past few quarters. So they did get up to 192 million monetized daily active users in Q4 of 2020. Aside from the standard demographic, country, and device targeting, Twitter has lots of different options. You can target based on interests, which target people based on how they've engaged over time and different topics that they've had on the platform, or you can target conversation topics, which tend to be a little bit more timely and talk about different things that they've engaged with on a shorter time scale. You can also use keyword targeting as well as follower lookalikes, and you can target based on the way that users have engaged with your tweets or any of the standard retargeting options of how they've engaged with your website, customer upload list. And if you want to get another full rundown of all of the different Twitter ads targeting options, you can check out the video at the top of the screen right now. The last platform we're going to talk about is LinkedIn, the best platform when it comes to any B2B type of targeting, simply based on the target demographics that we have. 51% are men, 49% are women, which is going to be the most balanced breakdown we've had of any of the different platforms, and 60% of users are between the ages of 25 and 34. So it's not necessarily one of those platforms that's leaning heavily younger or heavily older. It's a little bit in the middle, as these are the types of users who are trying to get their career off the ground, so they want to make sure that their LinkedIn profile is set up, squared away, so that they can engage with users and potential employers to make sure that they can get the job and move into the career that they want. LinkedIn has 260 monthly active users and nearly 740 million members in 200 countries and regions worldwide, which you can see in that map down at the bottom. 176 million of those users are in the United States. Unfortunately, only 22% of users access the platform on a weekly basis, so it is one of the lower frequency platforms that people use. But if you look at the stats off to the right, which LinkedIn provides on their company website, there are a lot of good reasons to make sure that even if it is on a lower frequency basis, these are the right people to get in front of. 3 million users have MBA graduates degrees. 6 million are IT decision makers, 10 million are C-level executives, 17 million are opinion leaders, 63 million are decision makers, and 90 million are senior level influencers within their company. So although you're reaching into an audience that might not be on the platform all that frequently, these are the right people to make decisions that could impact the company. When you're trying to get them to check out your solution, product, service, whatever it is, these are the right people who can make things happen. So make sure that you make those fewer impressions that you'll get count, because these are the ones that are going to matter. Aside from the regular demographic and country information, we can target people based on their job history. What is their level of seniority? What's their job title? How many years have they been at this specific role? We can also target based on the company information. What's the size of the company? What industry are they in? What's the growth rate? Or we can start to get into kind of the nitty-gritty of that user's work history, whether it's the skills that they've been endorsed for, or any of the member groups that they've engaged with, or the interests that they've expressed by what content they've viewed. We can also utilize lookalike audiences. and we can target people based on how they've engaged with our website, or we can upload different company lists or user lists to make sure that we're re-engaging with them, depending on how we're trying to reach them in the buyer funnel. If you want a full rundown of all of the targeting options on LinkedIn, you can check out the link at the top of the video right now. Thanks for watching our video. If you thought it was useful, give us a thumbs up below.
We release a new video at least once a week, so if you want to get notified of when a new one comes out, be sure to subscribe to the Paid Media Pros channel.